some of the issues that immigrant workers are facing during the recession time, and how they can safeguard their immigration status in the US. Then if time permits, then we'll also discuss about some issues surrounding 221G visa processing.
Sounds good. So why don't we take it from the start, Santosh? We can start with the lottery process, which we already know. I'm sorry, did I hear a question?
Everyone else.
So as we already know, the dates for the registration have been announced now between March 1st and March 17. So what do you think, Santosh? What are we expecting to see in terms of numbers this year? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm assuming that we'll receive more number of registrations this year. I'm assuming that it will be over 300,000 applications, applicants will be registering for the CAP this year. So there will be a huge competition again. Few reasons behind this, because there are a lot of students who have been going through the lottery process for the past 3 years, and also since the market is doing okay overall, and like I know, like there are a lot of employers who are trying to file H-1B petitions for those who are in India also. So that's why I'm assuming that we'll see a good number of H-1B registrations this year too.
I agree. I think last year we had more than 450,000 applications, and I don't think it'll be any different this year. Yeah. So the one question that we get asked all the time is, many employers and employees ask us this all the time. Like, if you have multiple companies, or let's say if an employee has multiple options, can they file multiple applications for registration?
That's a good question. So first, we are all aware of the fact that the same employer cannot file multiple registrations for the same beneficiary, right? If they do that, all the registrations will be canceled. Multiple employers, two different unrelated employers can file H-1B registration for the same candidate as long as they have a legitimate bona fide job offers available at each of these employer locations. So, for example, there's company A and company B, right? They have completely different job opportunities available for a particular candidate. They can go ahead and submit registrations. Okay.
What if company A and company B are owned by the same person? Is that still the case?
Then it becomes a challenge, because USCIS might question that, hey, both the companies are working together to increase the chances of the beneficiary's H-1B petition getting picked up in lottery, right? Especially this becomes a challenge if they are trying to file registrations for a bunch of employees through both the companies. For example, if A and B are two companies, right? If they are filing common registrations for one candidate in common, that should be fine. But if they are filing for a bunch of employees, right? That means there is something wrong there.
So to sum it up, one employer filing multiple registrations for the same candidate is a strict no-no. Multiple employers filing registration for the same candidate, as long as the job is a bona fide job offer, is okay. Different companies with the same employer or same owner filing for the same employee is also okay, as long as the job offer is bona fide. But if it is just being done to maximize that particular person's chances, then USCIS will see through it and we discourage you from doing that.
Yeah.
I also want to quickly mention, if you guys have any questions, you can type them in the chat box and we will try our best to address as many as possible. Continue, Santosh.
Yeah, and then make sure, so what happens is typically they're working through employer A, and then the client submits a registration, the vendor submits a registration, and if their employee also submitting a registration, right? So then it's a problem, because at the time of filing the H-1B petition, we need to make sure that neither the vendor or the client submitted registration for the same candidate. If they did so, that means they are trying, like all of them are trying to file the beneficiary registration for the same position. right?
Property.
And you might receive a NOI for those cases.
So be careful who's filing. If it's a client, if you are in a position where you are working at a third party, and if a client is filing for you, make sure the vendor and your current employer doesn't do that. Or anybody in the chain. I mean, if you're in a chain of employment, make sure only one entity is filing for you. That should be all good. So let's go past the lottery now. Let's say you filed, everything was good with the filing, and you got picked. Let's talk a little bit about the qualifications. What is required at the time of filing when you're registering and versus at the time of filing for the H-1B. So there's a slight difference in the requirements there. And Santosh, can you elaborate that?
Yes. So when the employer is submitting their registrations, right, they should have a bona fide job that is available for the worker, right? So they should say that, hey, we have the position available for the employee. But at the time of filing the petition, you have to provide an agreement to show that the particular position actually exists for the candidate, right? Not only that, the employee has to meet all the position requirements as of the day we file the petition. So assume that there is somebody who does not have a bachelor's degree as of March 1st. That is perfectly fine, even though the bachelor's degree is required for the position. Even if they don't graduate by March 1st, it's okay to submit the registration. But before they file H-1B petition, they need to meet the position requirements, which is a bachelor's degree.
As of the lottery registration dates, basically. So if you are still going to school and you're going to graduate over the summer or later in spring, you don't have to have the degree at the time of filing when you file the registration. That's in March. But before you file your H-1B petition, you should have graduated. I have a related question. Priyanka is asking that you said you can apply from different companies if you have offer letters, but can a person on F1 work in multiple companies? Just like I said, the offer has to be bona fide, number one. And remember that the work does not start until the start date of H-1B, which is the 1st of October, 2023. So you can have an offer, you don't need to be working for them, but the offer should be legitimate. I hope that answers your questions, but let's go back to the H-1B come time of filing petition. What else do we need to be careful about?
Yeah. So the other thing is regarding the cap registration, right? So for example, if somebody is filing under the master's cap, right? So we need to make sure that they meet the master's degree requirement as of the day they file the H-1B petition. So even if they don't graduate in March, they can still submit the application in March, registration in March. But as of the day they file the H-1B petition, they should either have graduated with a master's degree, or if they don't graduate as of that day, at least they need to be able to obtain a letter from the registrar stating that they did meet all the graduation requirements and that the only thing that is pending is just the graduation ceremony. So if you can get that letter also, you will qualify for master's cap exemption.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And one thing to clarify here, even though you submit the registration under master's, if it gets picked up in lottery under the regular bachelor's cap, then you don't have to worry about the master's degree at all.
All right. Great answer. Thank you for clarifying that, Santosh. There's another question. They're saying this person says they are on OPT right now. They got permission to work 20 hours only per week because last moment one of the courses needs to be retaken. In this situation, can I file H-1B for this year? Well, I think we answered your question just a minute back saying, if you qualify and if you meet all the requirements as of the time of filing, so you can still register, and up until, whatever window you get, let's say by the end of June, or, I would just say, to be safe, June, if you have met all the requirements and you've, completed the coursework, you haven't fallen out of status and all of that, and you would see yourself as having met all the coursework, and just like Santosh said, you can get a letter from the dean or somebody in your ISO. You should be fine, even if you don't have the diploma in your hand at that point. Again, the requirement is that you should have completed the degree requirements. You may not necessarily have the diploma, but as long as there's nothing pending from your side, you should be all right.
Yeah. And to add to whatever Srila just mentioned, right? H1B petition, like even though you're working 20 hours a week, if you want to continue working 20 hours a week on H1B, you can do so. Because the CAP petition can be filed even for a part-time position. It need not be a full-time position. So if there's an employer, for example, if they have an in-house project or something, and they have the work available only for 20 hours per week, they can still go ahead and file H1B petition for the 20 hours. Okay. So again, to get back to your question, she's like, I'm on OPT right now, 20 hours per week because so his situation. Yeah, there is no, I don't see any other issues in you being able to file the petition.
That's not an impediment. Just because you can't work full time now doesn't mean you can't apply for H1. These are completely under issues. Another question we have here is a person is on L1B for 3 years, and I think this year the company wants to file for H1B, and they're asking if the petition gets selected, can they then hold the L1B for 3 years and activate H1B? You mean, can you? Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, you've been on L1B. If you get picked in the lottery, can you switch to H1B? There's nothing on activating it, but I understand what you're saying. Can you switch to H1B from L1B? Santosh, you want to take that?
Yeah. So on L1B, you're allowed to work for maximum of 5 years, right? So L1B, I will allow you to work for maximum of 5 years. H1B, you can work for a maximum of 6 years. L1A, you can work for a maximum of 7 years, right? So now that you have already completed 3 years on L1B, when you file the H1B CAP, right? Unless you file for a change of status, you will continue to be on L1B even if the H1B gets approved.
That's a very important point to note.
Yeah.
When you are in existing status and you file for another status, unless you file for a change, it does not kick in automatically. If your H1B gets approved and you don't request a change of status, you will be required to leave the country, get your H1B stamping, come back, and only then your H1 will take effect.
Yeah. So in that way, they continue working on L1B.
Yeah. Versus if you request for change of status and it gets picked in the lottery and all of that happens, then you can start working on H1B starting October 1st. We have
Does that clear your question, Anirudh? I think, I'm not sure if he Anirudh, does it answer your question?
Let us know. Okay, so somebody completed their master's last year and filed petition. It's been 211 days since the status shows that it's still processing. What can I do to expedite this case? Really just two things here, right? You can either just wait. I wonder if there was an RFE. We don't have information to answer every question in this case, but if you got an RFE, we don't know. If there was something after, we don't know. But if nothing happened, you can still apply for premium processing and expedite it if that's an option. I'll take the next question. How many H1Bs can we apply from different? There is no statutory limit. I mean, just do whatever is ethical is what I will say. You know, as long as it's legit, as long as it's right, as long as it's ethical, there is no statutory limit. Let's assume every employer in the US wants to file for you, and all of the 450,000 applications are yours. That's a totally okay case, hypothetically speaking. But is it realistic? You know, so just do what's right. I'm a graduate student and last semester will be graduating in May. Can I file H1? We already covered this a little while ago. Yes, you can. You already have a bachelor's degree anyway, you can. And as long as you're able to get your master's in place, before you file your petition, you can also apply for master's CAP. My question is difference between change of status and consular, Santosh.
Good. So between change of status and consular. So if you're requesting for a change of status, right? So when you request for a change of status, your status will change to H1B as of the approval date. For example, if your H1B kicks in on October 1st, right? On that same date, your status will change from whatever is the current status, whether F1, L1, whatever, right? So your status will change to H1. Whereas if you request for consular notification, your status will not change even if the H1B is approved until you go out of the country, get visa stamping, and then come back on H1B status using H1B visa.
Anirudh, I think that clarifies your question further. So you asked, even if H1B is approved, I will be I'm sorry, even can I hold it without change? Yeah. So if you don't request for a change of status, you can continue L1B even if H1B is approved. It'll only kick in if you apply for a change of status.
Yeah. But
next question.
Just maybe I just want to discuss one thing in this topic. So just make sure, I don't know whether your H1B is filed for a different position or the same position. If it is filed for a different position, and if there is a USCIS visit, and if they realize that you're not working in that position, then they might revoke that H1B petition.
And if you
so that's one thing you need to keep in mind. Yeah.
I am a day one CPT student, and for those that don't understand what that means, is basically somebody who gets CPT on the first day as a start the school. I will be graduating next year. Can I file H1B this year? If you qualified, if you have an underlying bachelor's degree, there is nothing stopping you. You don't have to have a US degree to file the H1B. I'm currently an OPT, so I need to file H1B in master's. You don't have to, again, just what I said. It's an option if you're qualified. If you complete your master's, yes, you can. You don't have to. If you have an underlying bachelor's, the only requirement is a 4-year bachelor's degree or an equivalent thereof. Can I just file a regular cap as I'm still on F1? Yes, you can. It's not an issue if your H1B gets picked and you're in school. That's never a problem. Okay, I'm being asked different documents for registration from different employers. Can you give us a clear? Okay, what is the requirement for registration? Is some I think that'll be something that'll benefit everybody. What are the requirements for registration? Because sometimes employer can ask you for different things.
So all we need is your copy of your passport, right? Second thing is, if you're filing under master's cap, then we need some documentation to show that you either graduated with a master's degree from an accredited university, or that you'll be graduating by the time the petition, the H1B petition will be filed. Those are the only two things that we need to submit your registration.
So you don't need a whole lot of things. You don't need,
yes.
School
anything
documents.
Else, just your passport and degree certificates in case you're filing under master's cap.
Just something to identify you and what you're doing. Somebody else is asking, is there an option to file H1B on F2? Absolutely, yes. You can file H1B from any status. I am graduating in May 23. Am I eligible for master's cap? I just answered that multiple times. Yes, you are eligible as long as you meet the eligibility requirements as of the day of filing the H1B petition, not the registration. Many people are in that status right now. We understand it's middle of the last semester for many of you. You don't have to graduate before you file for registration again. What would be the case if we have a dependent, F2? It would delay the H1B process. There is no such reason. During the petition, can you also file separate? I'm not clear about the question, Priya, if you want to write it again. Krishna says, if an employee got H1B approved in 23 for employer A, is there any requirement that the employee has to work for employer A for a minimum period before switching to employer B?
Yes, so here is a problem with this. Although, so in the Federal Register, it clearly says that if an employer withdraws a cap petition during the same fiscal year, when I say fiscal year, the fiscal year starts from October 1st and so on September 30th of the next year, right? So if the employer withdraws the H1B petition during the same fiscal year, or if USCIS revokes the petition for fraud or misrepresentation, then your cap number will be recaptured. Hence, I recommend that you continue working for that employer for at least 1 year, right? In that way, the employer does not withdraw your cap registration within that 1 year period. Okay, with that said, there are a lot of times where when people file for a transfer before the 1 year period, you will get the transfer approved. That is not an issue. But at a later point of time, like maybe 4 or 5 years down the lane, when an officer realizes that the initial cap petition was withdrawn during the same fiscal year, then you run into issues at that point of time. Hence, we highly recommend that you continue working for your cap H1B employer for at least 1 year, right? That is until September 30th of next year, if it gets picked up in this lottery.
So as long as you can, unless there are reasons beyond your control, in which case, of course, you deal with it as it comes. Somebody wants to know what documentations are required if they completed their master's in UK and want to apply for H1 from UK. Again, the requirements for H1B program, H1B is a specialty occupation program, which means you need to have at least a bachelor's degree in the discipline that you work in. Let's just say computer science for the sake of convenience. It doesn't matter where you earn the degree, as long as it is a recognized school. And you can, if you've earned the degree outside the United States, then you will need to get it evaluated in the United States to get an equivalent of US bachelor's. And the rest of the process is the same for everybody. If you're filing H1B with multiple employers, should all the roles be same in which we're applying, or can we apply for multiple roles with multiple employers, for example? Okay, we covered this in the beginning by Vivek, but we will repeat it quickly. So if you are filing for a role with employer A, you can file for the same role with employer B, as long as both of them have a valid offer and they're not related. If those two employers are related, or if it's the same employer having different companies, that becomes fishy, because clearly here the intent of that employer is to maximize the chances of your employment. But if these are completely unrelated and legitimate positions, there is no problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, Santosh.
I'm sorry. So I think going back to the question from Priya, right? Priya, I think she sent a question regarding F2, right? So because we see a lot of people make this mistake. So when you're on F1 and your spouse is on F2, when you apply for H1B cap along with the change of status, make sure that you file for your spouse's change of status from F2 to H4 before October 1st, right? If your H1B petition is approved before October 1st, then you will use the H1B approval notice to file for a change of status. If your H1B petition is still in process, then what you need to do is you need to use a receipt notice and file for a change of status from F2 to H4.
If that's not clear, let us know.
Oh,
how exactly does...
Hello, sorry to interrupt. What if we are still on F1 OPT? We have not filed for H1 and our dependents wants to file for their H1.
Yeah, they can do that. They don't have any restriction. So the dependent from F2 to H1, they can do it. They do not affect because your status is not dependent upon your dependent status, right? So
yes,
that should be fine. There's no issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
F2 to H1B, what are the chances? It's a lottery. It doesn't matter which status you're coming from, it's a lottery. Everybody enters into the general draw. How exactly does the consular and change of status work? Consular processing just means either you are in this country, in the United States, and you've not applied for a change of status, in which case, if your H1B gets approved, you will need to leave the United States, go to the embassy in your home country. They will grant and stamp the visa, and then you come back on that status. Change of status simply means you are here in the United States on a status, and then you apply for a change to H1B. And as soon as your petition is approved, then you're automatically on H1B. If there's a confusion, let me know. Next question.
One thing, Sarila. So just to add to this one, in order to be eligible for a cap, you need to apply for a change of status. So if there is somebody on F1 visa, and if you want to take advantage of the cap OPT,
Santosh, your voice went away. You went on mute.
sorry. Okay. So if somebody wants to take advantage of cap, I don't know why.
It's again muted, sir.
Okay. Good. So if somebody wants to take advantage of cap, then they have to apply for a change of status. Unless you apply for a change of status request, you will not be eligible for a cap. So cap applies if somebody's OPT is expiring before October 1st, but after March 1st, right? Then if you apply for H-1B petition before your current OPT expires, along with a change of status, right? Then you will be eligible to work using cap gap until October 1st, which is when your H-1B kicks in.
So cap gap.
Does anyone have any questions regarding this?
So cap gap basically covers the gap between your F1 and the cap H-1B petition. If you have time again, like Santosh said, if your OPT is ending before October 1 and you've applied while the OPT was still valid, so you continue to get the advantage of working and being in status until your cap kicks in. What are the steps to be done if H-1B gets picked under regular cap while you're still in F1? I'm not very clear about the question, Karthik, but I think what you're saying is if you apply based on your bachelor's that's not from the United States and you're still pursuing your master's, what do you do? If that's the question, Santosh, you want to answer?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, right? Like he already has a bachelor's degree. He has a bachelor's degree. If it gets picked up in regular lottery, then he can go and apply for it. There's no issue with it.
And if you still want to complete your master's in the time being, you should. But if your question
so he can go back to school while he's on H-1B also.
Yeah.
Right. So while you're on H-1B, you could go to school part-time. There's no restriction as to the number of courses that you can take. So while on H-1B, you're free to take as many number of courses that you want. So you can be on H-1B status, continue working for your employer, and then attend school at the same time.
If H-1B is picked for an F2, do they have to give an interview? Not clear, Sandeep, whether you are in the country or not. If you're not in the country, well, if you're in F2, you are in the country, I assume, go through the steps. So same exact steps for everybody. There's nothing different if you come from a different status. So if you come from F1, or you come from F2, or you come from H4, or you come from L1B, the steps are pretty much the same, except the cap gap and the OPT thing. There's nothing different here. You don't have to go for an interview if you apply for a change of status from, within the country. You only go for an interview at the consulate. There is no such thing about H-1B interview prior to H-1B kicking in, and that's all for green cards and things like that. I am in OPT status right now, so if I get H-1B this year, on what status will I be doing the job? Again, I think you're talking about cap gap, I guess. Will I be done with the OPT? So just like Santosh said a while ago, if you have OPT and it's valid until the time you apply for your H-1B, you will have to time it. So let's say you get picked in the lottery in first week of June. Let's say you come to know that you've been picked and your OPT is still valid. I would say apply ASAP, especially if your OPT is like expiring in end of June or July or before October 1st. If you do that, then you get covered under what's called the cap gap that will cover you through the start of your H-1B period.
Yeah.
Can I
and to
file?
add to this, 1 second, Samina.
Sorry.
To add to this one, if somebody has H-1 OPT valid for 2 years, like maybe you have OPT valid for 1.5 years, and you want to take advantage of that OPT, right? But you still want to go through the H-1B lottery process. So what you can do is you can apply for H-1B in the lottery. Once it gets picked up, you apply for H-1B with constant notification, right? In that way, even though your H-1B is approved, you'll continue working on your OPT. That way you don't have to pay for the federal Medicare, Social Security taxes, right? So you continue working on OPT, and then before you want to switch to H-1B, you will either go for stamping, or your employer can file a new H-1B petition, which is cap exempt.
So that goes
and
back to what you
sent a direct message to me. Just wanna, because I think this is very important. Guys, be very careful whenever you're being charged with a criminal conviction, right? And these things vary from state to state. Okay, especially with any crime involving moral turpitude, for example, theft offenses. Okay, be very careful with theft offenses and any violence related crimes. Okay, hit and run, it's okay, but I guess if you get it dismissed, again, this is state specific, so we need to look at the actual case and then we'll be able to advise you on that one. Okay, but for by the time of filing H1B petition, typically they don't ask you to provide any of your criminal records. But if there is a criminal record which involves a felony offense, or if it involves a crime involving moral turpitude, there have been cases where they issued RFEs regarding that one. So you got to be very careful when doing this.
Or something related to drugs and also
Yes.
DWI.
Yes.
So be careful with those things. Can I file a new H1B holding a cap exempt H1 with nonprofit? Excellent question. We were going to talk about that, so Santosh. Let's take a case where you're not picked in lottery, you have an H1B through a nonprofit. What are the options?
Good. So if somebody's H1B does not get picked up in lottery, right? Apart from these regular CPT, Day 1 CPT and all that stuff, there are other options that are available which are more viable. Okay. Number one is working for a cap exempt employer, right? So a lot of universities like higher institutions of higher education or non-profit organizations or government organizations, they are eligible for as cap exempt employers. So they don't have to not to file H1B through those companies, they don't have to go through the lottery, right? So somebody might ask me, hey, Santosh, like you have a cap exempt employer, but they don't pay me much. What are my other options available, right? So the second option is while you're working for this cap exempt employer, at the same time, you can file a concurrent H1B through a for-profit entity like any IT consulting firm. Right? So typical IT consulting firm can file what is called a concurrent H1B, but you can work using this concurrent H1B only as long as you're employed with that non-profit organization or a cap exempt employer. Okay. Thing is, you cannot transfer your H1B from a non-profit organization, cap exempt employer, to a regular employer until you go through the lottery process again. Okay, you cannot transfer, but you can work concurrently with the new employer. Does that answer your question, Gopal?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. So the third option is even a for-profit employer can sometimes file a cap exempt petition. That means even an IT consulting firm can sometimes file a cap exempt petition, but this can only be done if the employee would be placed at a cap exempt employer's location for a substantial amount of time, and the job duties performed by these individuals will be in furtherance of the mission of that organization. So for example, if there is a research organization, okay, which needs somebody to work on a cancer research or something like that, right? So for a for-profit entity can place this candidate at that location as long as they're working for more than 21 hours at that location. You could file a cap exempt H1B petition for that employee.
A particular example of that would be somebody getting placed in a hospital working on their data, for example. So they need a data engineer for the records or whatever. You could be working in that hospital for 20 hours. And then for the rest of the 20 hours, you could seek another employment in your mainstream, which otherwise would be subject to cap. As long as, again, the nonprofit
interrupt, but yeah, this is Gopal. So there is a typical scenario. I don't know whether we have time to, go over that, but I'll briefly summarize quickly. So I was working for a healthcare client, and they are non-profit organization for past 4 years. So I recently moved to Kansas, and my company is in California. So state law said like you cannot work from out of California, so they have to transfer me to a consultancy now. And I don't know how that H1B got transferred, like cap exempt H1B got transferred to a consultancy recently, which happened like in December. So I am assuming that is like concurrent H1, like as just said, or maybe is it completely transferred and now become a regular H1B? So that's what my question was here.
Two things could happen. I'm sorry. Okay. So there could be two things that might happen. One is, are you working for that nonprofit organization still?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so since you're continuing to work for the non-profit organization, your new employer is able to file a concurrent H-1B petition for you.
Okay.
So with that, you'll be working for both the employers at the same time. One is a cap exempt employer, the other one is a cap subject employer. Once you lose this cap exempt employer position, right? For example, if your employment with the cap exempt employer ends, then you no longer hold the H-1B status for this new company also.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But
it
if
does.
it's
Thank you.
not concurrent, if it's not concurrent and they transferred it to a for-profit or a cap subject employer, that can also be possible as long as that cap subject employer is placing you to work with the nonprofit entity only. So probably that's what it looks like happen. If it's a consulting company, that is probably the case. We don't have all the information to tell you exactly what could have happened, but that could be a possible scenario.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next question. Somebody's working on STEM OPT. Suppose they work with employer A and H-1B gets approved with employer B in consulate processing. Will I be able to travel having payroll from employer A? The payroll on employer A, if I understand, is on OPT, right? Ajay. So, I mean, don't see that being a problem. If you worked on OPT with somebody and somebody else filed and got the H-1B approved and you're coming back with them, that should not be an issue at all. And this is a very common misconception that only the employers that you work with OPT are eligible to file or valid. The H-1B is only valid. There's no such requirement. You could not be working at all and somebody could still file. You could be working with 3 different employers on OPT and a 4th employer can file. That's never a problem. As long as you maintain your status, that's the only thing. Raj says,
Hi, sorry if I'm just interrupting. Actually, I'm Prashant. I'm currently in UK. So I finished my master's here in UK and I'm currently on post-study work visa.
in the
So
United States?
in the United Kingdom, in the UK.
Okay.
I'm in the UK. So I was looking to file an H-1B and I was wanting to know like what are the, if any idea, if you could tell me if the process is clear for that, and you can just
So
brief me on that.
I addressed somebody a few minutes back that was from UK as well. I'm not sure if it was you, but the process is no different than it would be for anybody that's not in the United States. All you need is a valid degree or a 4-year undergrad or a bachelor's degree in related discipline, which is an equivalent of a US bachelor's in that related discipline. So I would say go ahead, get your evaluation done to make sure you qualify. And then if you have a job offer, the process is the same as anybody else.
Okay, like what are the registration charges of the H-1B? And like, because there is a confusion that they were saying that the prices were going to increase to $250 this
Not
time.
this year, it's again $10
Oh,
per. So there is
thanks a
no
lot.
change.
Thanks a lot for the clarification. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Sunila. Just a quick follow-up question on the same topic as well.
We would really love to answer all your questions, but I think we have about 30 questions ahead of you. If you want to please type in the chat, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's just only fair to other people who are typing in. So if you can just, unless it is something directly related to what we're talking about, I would really encourage you guys to please type if you don't mind. Thank you. Raj says, will there be any immigration problems if we're filing H-1B now, even though my master's is going to be completed? So again, Raj probably joined late. Again, I repeat for benefit of everyone, it does not matter if your degree is not complete at the time of registration. You need to meet the requirements at the time of filing your H-1B, which will be later in the summer or somewhere around June timeframe. By that time, mostly all of the graduation ceremonies are over and you have completed the requirements, unless there's a specific case. Shiva says, if there's any, okay, I think we took it directly. Harshit says, what all documents are required to file H-1B if your employer is Snowstack and I'm working on contract with a client? Any documents from the client side, Santosh?
Yeah, so based on a recent memo, the client letter is not a mandatory. Okay, but we always encourage you to provide it if at all possible. The most important thing is to show that there is a bona fide job offer that is available, right? So typically we use an MSA, PO, vendor letter. So if you're able to obtain the client letter, that's well and good. Even if you do not obtain it, that's still fine. The USCIS has been approving H1B petitions even without a client letter. But having a client letter will definitely help in expediting the process and getting the approval quickly. Does that answer your question?
Good to have, but not a requirement.
Yeah.
People get approvals
Hello.
without it as well.
Hello, Santosh Garu.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry. This is Anil Kumar.
Yes.
I have a question actually, sir. When you say that the client letter is not a requirement,
Mhm. You're on mute.
I think he might left. Hi Santosh, this is Ajay. I have a question about the current problem.
I'm sorry, you're cutting off. I'm not able to hear you.
Santosh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Hi Santosh, this is Ajay. So actually, my question is all about filing multiple H1Bs,
Mhm.
because there was a lot of confusion, employer should be different and attorney should be different. So I'm confused with this thing. So could you please clarify on that?
No, attorney need not be different. The positions are
Okay.
very different. Each of them, see, attorneys will be filing like thousands of H1s, right?
Okay.
They would not
Mhm.
know if we are filing for the same beneficiary through different employees. There is no way that the attorney would know. That is not an issue. The issue is whether they have separate bona fide job offers, right? So if there are two companies filing for the same candidate, right? Assume that Cisco is filing for your H1B and then IBM is filing your H1B, right? Then it's clear that they have separate bona fide job offers available for you. But assume that there are two sister companies filing your H1B, right? Then there is a chance that they may be working together to file H1B for the same position, right?
Okay.
And also, especially if these two sister companies are filing, or these two companies are filing registrations for a bunch of candidates. For example, if they are filing for you and your friends, right? From the same set of companies, then that's a red flag. Does that answer your question?
Sunila ma'am, I think you're on mute. Could you please unmute yourself?
I am not sure why that's happening. Anyway, we'll move on to the next question. So somebody says, I have an H1B approved in consular processing. What are the possibilities to change it to change of status? Covered it briefly, but Santosh.
Yeah. So if your H1B petition is approved under transfer processing, right? And right now you want to change your status to H1. The only way that you can do it is by filing a fresh H1B petition. But this one, you don't have to file it under cap again. So what you can do is you can file a H1B change of status, which is cap exempt petition. Instead of going through the lot, yeah. So you could file for a change of status later on, but you have to file a fresh H1B petition for that. It's not you, your employer will be the one filing it.
Or they can file an amendment and that would reflect that change as well.
Yeah. And then along with the change of status request.
Vineet says he's currently on F1 and going to graduate in 23. Can I file in master's quota? I think again, we need to join late perhaps. Yes, you can, as long as you complete your master's requirement by the time you file your H1B. Next question is, I'm currently on F1, going to same question. I just answered Schmidt, so I hope you should be clear on that. Heyman says, if we have transferred 2 colleges for masters, will there be any issue for H1B stamping or filing?
No, as long as he graduated from good universities and there's no issue with his F1 status, he should be fine.
As long as there's no problem with the status, as long as the universities were accredited, as long as everything
It should be
remained
fine.
okay, it shouldn't be a problem. If you just transferred for valid reasons, it should be okay. Will there be any problem during immigration or stamping if we file H-1B, not even though my master's is going to be completed? No, if you're eligible, if you have underlying bachelor's and you otherwise qualified, that's not a problem, Raj. says, can I get clarity on H1, number one, starting from the day our application is picked? And one that we can start from the time our OPD ends. I'm not very clear about your question. If you want to break your question down and type it again, I would be happy to address. Nahid says, I filed for STEM OPT yesterday. If I get picked in H1B, can I use the entire STEM OPT? Nahid, Santosh did talk about this a little while ago, but I'll sum it up what he said. If let's say your OPT comes through and your H1B comes through as well, you can apply with a consular notification. So even if your H1 gets picked, the change of status will automatically not kick in. So you'll continue to be on your F1 until your OPT is valid. And that way, you can maximize the time on your OPT. Once that's done, you can step out of the country, either file another H1, or if your approval is still valid, you can go for stamping with that and then come back and kickstart your H1 from that point. Arvind says, currently I'm working with employer A. My H1 got picked with employer B. So you working with employer A on H1B? I'm not clear. Can I switch to employer B without losing my job at employer A? If I lose the job in that case, is there any way we can transfer the same job to a different employer? Assuming you are on H1B already, Santosh, can you go to B without? Go ahead.
So currently I'm working with employer A. My H1B got picked up in employer B. Can I switch to employer B without losing my job at employer A? Good. There is a way to do this, right? So what you could do is,
my H1 got picked with employer B. So you working with employer A on H1B? I'm not clear. Can I switch to employer B without losing my job at employer A? If I lose the job in that case, is there any way we can transfer the same job to a different employer? Assuming you are on H1B already, Santosh, can you go to B without? Go ahead.
so currently I'm working with employer A. My H1B got picked up in employer B. Can I switch to employer B without losing my job at employer A? Good. There is a way to do this, right? So what you could do is, once you're so you will move, like I'm assuming that you're on OPT or whatever status, right? And then you got your H1B picked up through employer B, right? Now you will join employer B on your H1B, and then employer A can file what is called a concurrent H1B petition for you. In that way, you can continue working for both employer B as well as employer A. Does that answer your question, Aravind?
Yeah, I got you.
Please mute yourself. Rajesh Reddy says, I currently have an OPT and my dad's friend wants to sponsor the green card. Will that be possible? I don't have information to answer your question. On what basis is he willing to? Just a dad's friend is no category. There has to be a relationship. It's either family-based or employment-based. If he has a job offer for you, that may be a thing, but we need more details. Priya says again, we need to only change the status from F2 to H4 if F1B is approved only before October. What would be the status of F2 if the H1 takes longer and approved after October?
Yeah, they'll continue being on F2 until H1B is approved.
What should I do if my H1B does not get picked until after the last stage? Filing, is there a chance of maintaining my status in the US? Complicated question, no straight answer to that. I mean, maintaining status in US, you need to be doing something that's legitimate. If you're a student and you want to go back to school, you can do that. If H1B doesn't get picked, I mean, you got to explore other options, but we don't have the time to get into details for that one. We will keep it specific to H1. You want to consult us offline, please do. Sriram says, is there any alternative option if same question, if I don't pick up if those people who are in India don't get picked up, well, apply again next year or come in on another visa. Again, what are the options? We can talk offline.
Hello,
Ashutosh-
Sunita, and hello, Sunita ji, and hello, Sunila ji. I'm sorry, and Santosh Garu.
So, ma'am, you're again muted. It's just to avoid everyone to, not everyone to talk on the Zoom. So they're just
Okay.
blocking everyone.
So,
Okay, sounds
and
good.
also when sending a message like question to you, right? I think, I don't know, for some reason, I'm not receiving most of the questions. I'm not able to see the questions, Sunila.
You're not able to see the questions?
No, not some
Okay,
of
I
the
think
questions.
because they're like 77 questions ahead of us and I'm going in the order. That might
Okay.
be,
Okay,
but
maybe
I
that's
am
it.
going in the order, so we hope not to miss. And I'm sorry, I don't think we'll be able to get to all of these, but we will try. What are the options available if my lottery doesn't get picked in the first? Like, what if there isn't a second lottery? You know, you are in the same boat with thousands of other people. I mean, unless you find another way and you want to stay in the US legitimately, you'll have to find another status to move to. Otherwise, there's unfortunately nothing.
And we actually went through the options available, right? They can work for a cap exempt employer. They can work for a cap exempt employer as well as a cap subject employer. And the other option would be to work for a cap subject employer working for a nonprofit organization. So they do have options available. Actually, there are a few agencies or like institutions like Institute of Higher Education who are willing to sponsor part-time cap exempt H1Bs so that you could be working for that or those organizations. At the same time, you'll be able to work in your regular job using a concurrent H1B. So there are different options available. You just got to explore those.
You need more information, please feel free to email us. At max, how many petitions can we drop? I answered that again, as many as are legitimate. I'm a graduate transfer student. I am graduating in December 23. Can I file my H1B? You can file under a regular cap if you have an underlying graduate degree that is directly in the discipline. Sai Prashant says, I did my master's in UK. I think we talked about it. Can I apply for H1B? Yeah. Rajesh Reddy, I'm currently an OPT and my dad's friend. I think we talked about that as well. Please don't repeat your questions if we've answered. That just slows everything down here. My employer has not sponsored an H1B before. Okay. So I would have to actively instruct them and follow up with them. Can you please mention the initial steps that my employer would have to take? Sumed Rishi. If your employer has never done this, then there is kind of a few extra things that they need to do. We need more information to tell you. We don't know anything about them. So I wouldn't be able to tell you much. But one thing that they need to do is, make sure they're a legit business. They also have to register their employer's identification number with Department of Labor. That's the basic requirement if they've never done H1Bs. But after that, I mean, I encourage you to drop me an email and we can send you a kind of a checklist or steps that they need to follow. And if they want to talk to us, we are happy to schedule a consultation. Vasanti says, I'm currently an OPT and want to know about SEVP portal. Do I have an EAD client letter or can my consultancy should help? Satosh.
What is it? I'm sorry.
So Vasanti says, I'm currently on OPT and want to know about the SEVP portal. Do I need to have an incline letter or my consultancy letter should help? I think her question is related to maintaining her OPT status.
I guess she's referring to the 983 form.
Yes.
The OPT extension form, right? Yeah, as long as she gets it from her employer, that should be sufficient.
Yeah, you don't need it from the client. Just whoever's running your payroll, you need a letter from them. They're the one employing you. Shubhra says, shall I apply for H1B if my degree is midway? Can it hinder? We have covered that, Shubhra. No, it will not hinder your student visa as long as you have underlying degree that qualifies. You should complete your master's anyway, and you can do so while you are on H1 as well. Aishwarya says, if my H1B got withdrawn, last year. If I file for H1B and gets picked, what are the chances to get RFEs? Insufficient information for us to answer. Was it the first year that it got withdrawn? How long were you there? Why was it withdrawn? We need to know all of that without we can say anything. If there's something in the background, in your background that triggered it, then you probably can get asked those questions again. But if not, then it should not be related. Again, feel free to write us your question in detail and we will be happy to answer. Can visitor B1, B2 apply directly for H1B? You want to answer that, Santosh?
Yeah. So they can apply for H1B, but the chances of them getting a change of status to H1B will be very little. Reason being, so if they are okay, assume that they submit their registration in March. If they are coming here in June, yes, they have an option of actually applying for a change of status from B1, B2 to H1B. Okay, but the problem is, if you apply for a change of status within 90 days of entering on B1, B2, then there is a presumption that you had the intention to apply for a change of status at the time of entering into the country. So they may categorize this as misrepresentation. To read more about this one, just type in 30-day, 60-day, 90-day rule. You'll be able to see that one. So if you're entering on a B1, B2 visa, please do not try to apply for a change of status within 90 days of entering into the country. Okay, but after that, yes, you can apply for a change of status to H1. There's no issue with that.
Kirtana says, can you please explain about consular H1B again? Consular H1B just basically means if you are either in the United States and did not file for change of status, or you're applying for H1B when you're outside the United States, you have to go to the consulate for the final stamping after USCIS approves your H1B petition that's filed here with USCIS. So USCIS will approve it, your petitioner will give it to you. You have to go to the consulate, get your stamping and come back. Ajay says, can I work for 2 companies on my OPT? Short answer is yes. Long answer is we don't know. We don't have the details. Do I have to pay extra taxes if it is mandatory to notify each employer that I'm working with other employer? Can I work 40 hours each at each company parallelly?
Okay, so your service, right? Your school will authorize whether you can work, how many number of hours you can work, and then how many employees that you can work for, right? So this is something that you got to check with your school.
As far as taxes are concerned, you pay taxes on your total income, not the number of employments.
Yeah.
Hours again, check with your DSO. I have done my bachelor's and master's in the US. Last year, my employer filed for H1B in regular when he was supposed to file in undergrad cap. Bachelor's, you mean. The H1B got picked, but I let it go since the cap was incorrect. Will it be a problem this year when I apply for the lottery? I am not sure. Why would you do that? It doesn't make a difference. Go ahead, Santosh.
No, I think she's like, okay, maybe she not phrased the question properly. So maybe she doesn't have a master's degree, but they filed the registration under master's. Is that true? Like, what is the person's name? I didn't see the question.
Yes, yes, Mr. Santosh, that's right. I only had a bachelor's.
So you don't have a master's degree, but they filed your registration under master's, and the petition got picked up in master's cap. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if that is the case, then the employer would not have been able to file your petition at that time. But now that you have a master's degree, they will be able, like if the petition gets picked up in lottery now, they'll be able to use that and file your petition. There is no issue with that.
In other words, that doesn't go against you, whatever happened last year.
Thank you.
Dhruv says, suppose my H1B is approved in October, when should I go to India for stamping? Whenever you want. If it's a change of status and you're here and you don't go for entire 6 years, not a problem. You know, when, there's nothing in the regulations or the statute that says you have to go within a year or 3 years or 6. It just depends on when you want to. Hashish Pati, I'm sorry. How many H1s can we file? Are you the employer or the employee, or are you talking about registrations? Please clarify your question. Is it okay if we file multiple H1s this year? Same question. Again, if you were the employee and the question is how many different employers can file for you? As many legitimate offers as you have. Short answer. Vikram says, can we file multiple H1s from different employers? And if picked from multiple employers, then can it be a problem? Same answer. If all of those offers are valid and those employers are unrelated, that is your best case scenario. If one person has 10 companies and they file for the same position for you in all 10 and they all get picked, you're in trouble. And so is that employer. But if they're unrelated, you should be okay.
Yeah.
Bani
The other
says,
thing is,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So the other thing is you should also have the intent to work for that employer, right? When you're submitting a position for that employer, should have the intent to work for that employer. You cannot be having intent to work, like you cannot be intending to work for 10 employees at the same time. Right? So I would recommend like not to submit too many registrations, even if it's a separate employer. Right? Because at some point of time, if you say a question, hey, why did you apply for 10? Like, why did 10 employers submit your registration? Right? So it is logically speaking, it does not make sense for an employee to get offers from 10 different employers to sponsor
Yeah,
it from
in real time. Whatever is
real
real
time doesn't happen, and then they'll start digging into it to see if you're actually somehow conspired for and with these employers to submit your registration, right? So I would suggest not to do something like that.
We have 100+ questions in 20 minutes, so we'll have to speed this up. I'm currently on, Bhanu says, I'm currently on F1 and I'm not taking CPT. I'm willing to take OPT. Will that'll be coming May to June. Will I be able to apply for H1B? Yes, you will be. It's not a detriment. You may be better actually if you are in OPT and things like that for gap and all of that. But you've not even applied. Never mind. You should be fine. Meghna says, I'm currently on F1, going to graduate this May. Can I file? Yes, you can. Again, you should be eligible as of the filing of H1B petition, not registration. How many H1s can be applied in CPT? Applying for H1B does not depend on your CPT. If you have a valid job offer, go ahead, apply. Mukesh, all right. Rohan says, I've exhausted my initial OPT and 2-year STEM. I'm currently doing another master's to maintain my status and have taken CPT. Can I apply for H1B? Yes, you can. Will there be complications? No, as long as you have not never fallen out of status or otherwise gotten into any trouble with law or school at any point. Somebody says, if I have...
I'm sorry,
yes,
just to add to that one, make sure your CPT, whatever the CPT that you're applying for, is an integral part of your course curriculum, right? That is very important. Unless it's an integral part of your course curriculum and then you continue your studies in that degree, right? You're not considered to be maintaining your status. So make sure whichever CPT that you are taking, whichever degree that you are joining is an integral part of your course curriculum. Okay, if that is the case, then you should be fine.
If I have a bachelor's degree from US and my master's is from Australia, will the H1B process still be the same? Yes, it'll be regular cap because the rest 20,000 above the 65,000 H1Bs are reserved for US masters only. Your Australian masters will not count. It will be regular cap for you. I don't know the name here. Manikanta says, I have completed my master's and I have applied for OPT, but I got RFE, and for that, the submission date is March. Now, can I file H1? Yes. Again, if you've completed your degree requirements, you've graduated and all of that, yes, you can. RFE does not get in the way. Suppose my H1B is approved. When is the earliest time I should go to India for stamping? I think I answered that question. There is no statutory timeline. You go to India whenever you want to go, after ideally your H1 kicks in or before. If you go before the H1 kicks in, they won't let you come in until you within the last 60-day time period of the start date of H1B. Heyman says, my job is with one employer and my H1B is with other. I've lost my job recently. I'm in search of a new job, but my payroll is taken care of by my employer B. Can I travel to India for stamping at this moment using a client letter by employment A? If you were employed with employer A and you've lost the job, then you cannot use that client letter because they are going to verify, and it's misrepresentation if you're saying you're still there when you're not, even if somebody else is running your payroll a month. Kirtan says, will it be a problem if I apply for CPT, OPT, or H1B if there's pending misdemeanor case? We don't know what the misdemeanor is in. Again, Santosh just briefly talked about, if you have criminal convictions in the background, please be super careful about what you write. Yes, you need to give all the information, but make sure you word it correctly also. You could mean something and say something else, and it could land you in trouble. We encourage you to consult with an attorney before you do that. Again, we don't know what the misdemeanor is. We can't answer that question in detail. Chandu says, please mute yourself. I can't do that. Sai says, can I apply H1B after coming to US on a dependent visa? It doesn't matter which status you're in, you can apply for H1B. Just make sure you're covered at all times under some legit status. Sai says, multiple H1B from child companies, will it be a problem? Yes, if the same employer is filing from different companies just to maximize your chances, it can be a problem. Krishna says, if my H1B and my projects end, let's say in mid of April, can I travel to India in the month of May? Will there be immigration issues? Santosh?
So he's referring to cap petition, or is he referring to a regular petition?
I think he's already on H1B and the project ends. That's
okay.
right.
The project ends. If the project ends, then if he travels outside the country, he should only come back once he gets a project and amendment is filed, right? So after the amendment is filed, if he already has a visa stamping, then he can use that existing visa stamping. If not, he has to go for visa stamping after this amendment is approved.
Once we get approved for the H1 and we need to go for filing at the same time within 3 months, or no, again, there is no timeline. You don't, if you get your H1 and you are in the United States and you file for change of status, there is no such requirements that you need to now go and get stamping and come back. You only need to travel if you need to travel, especially if you, again, if you file for change of status, you don't need to. If you did not file for change of status, you need to travel outside for the H1 to kick in, or your current status will continue until its expiration. Rohit says, as we have only one lottery last time, how many lotteries can we expect? Don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, maybe twice, maybe 2 rounds. We'll see. Priyanka says, I'm currently on H4. If my H1B gets picked, from when can I start working? Post my change of status is approved or petition is approved? Petition, change of status will be approved if it was filed with the petition. If you did not file change of status and your petition is approved, you will have to leave the country to get your H1B stamping. Once you come back in, you will start working on H1B. If you did file your change of status with the petition and it's a cap subject, H1B, then you can start from 1st of October. Did I miss something there, Santosh?
Yeah, so basically she has to wait so she can start from the later date of October 1st or the date her H1B petition gets approved with N84. So if your H1B petition gets approved on September 1st, then you can start working only from October 1st. Whereas if your H1B petition gets picked up, gets approved on November 1st, then you have to wait until November 1st to start working on H1B. Assuming that the H1B petition is approved with I-94.
Great. How can I know whether my employer filed H1B or not? Will I get any confirmation or proof? If you get in the lottery registration, okay. So will you, only your employer will know, you will not know. there has to be, well, there has to be an underlying relationship of trust if you're going to be working with somebody. If they don't let you know, then probably they don't want to employ you, or there's something else that we don't know. Can answer that question. Ravina Paul says, my H-1B is approved. When is the earliest time for me to go to India? Again, repeated question. There is no such requirement unless you did not apply for a change of status like we just discussed. Dhruv says, my fiance is from India, wants to apply for H-1B this year. Could you explain what will be the process if her H-1B gets picked? Dhruv, you did not mention what status she's in, what status you're in. If she's here in a valid status, I mean, there's nothing stopping her from applying for H-1B. But you want to make sure that while she waits for H-1B, she remains in the United States, that she has a valid status. Suhas says, I have a question on H-1B stamping. I have a DUI 4 years ago. Entire proceeding has been completed. Since then, my OPT has been approved and my H-1 too. Does this have any impact when I go to India for stamping? Carry all the paperwork, all of the court, right from the start to the end, whatever you had, which state it was, we don't know. Many of the states transferred the information to the feds, which means immigration might already have it. Some of the states do not. We don't know which state you're from. In either event, if you get asked something, be very forthright and honest about everything that happened. Do not misrepresent, do not lie, give them everything that they want.
And, Srila, I think the other person was asking, what is the earliest date that they can go for stamping? So if your H-1B is approved, you can attend H-1B stamping up to 90 days before, like for example, if your H-1B is approved as of October, the H-1B is going to kick on October 1st, right? So anytime 90 days, from 90 days before that October 1st date, they can go for stamping, which is the earliest date, if they want to go earlier.
How long before the H-1B start date can they come to the country, Santosh?
10 days. 10 days before their H-1B start date, they can come into the country. But they can go for stamping up to 90 days before their H-1B start date.
Thank you for that clarification. Will there be a problem if I apply for H-1B from out of country if there is past misdemeanor? Studied previously in the USA and exited the country, trying to enter again if H-1B is picked. Need more information on what the misdemeanor was about? Please feel free to email us and we will share the information at the end of the session. We don't have information to answer your question, I think, and mostly we would like to keep that confidential as well. Excuse me. Sagar says, I'm completing my graduation in November. Am I eligible to apply? If you have a valid undergrad degree, you can apply. Excuse me. Akhil says, I'm not eligible for OPT, so I need to transfer from CPT to H1. How many H1s can I apply for? I have not completed my master's. I could be completing by April or mid-June. When I Google, it was showing the documents need to be submitted before June 30th. Complicated question, Akhil. So if you want to go from F1 to H1, that's not a problem. Make sure you stay on F1 until your H1 is approved. And you qualified at the time of... I'm just going to take a sip of water. Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't know which question you're on. If you tell me the time we received the question, I can go to that
452. Question. It was at 452 for
Akhil. 1 second. 452. Okay. 452. Hi, Sundari. Okay. So is it from my phone? Should I start from my phone?
Akhil, somebody.
Oh, Akhil, okay. I'm not eligible for OPT. So I need to transfer from CPT to H-1B. How many H-1s can I apply for? I have not completed my master's yet. It could be completing, I could be completing by April end or mid-June. When I did Google, it was showing the documents needed to be submitted before June 30th, consider or regular. Okay. So I think there are multiple questions here. First thing, there is no restriction on the fact that you're on CPT does not make any difference as to the number of H1B petitions that you have to file, right? So, but once your H1B petition gets picked up in lottery, you are supposed to submit the registration, like submit the H1B petition within 90 days of the petition getting picked up, the registration getting picked up in lottery. So typically the registrations are picked up on March 1st. So you have to submit your H1B petition for the first round before June 30th. Whether it's consular or regular processing or master's cap, regular cap, consular notification or CNF status, any of these petitions, right? You have to submit them within 90 days of the registration getting picked up in lottery. So you have to, for the initial round, you have to submit these cases before June 30th. Next question. I have done my master's in Australia recently and I don't have any experience here. Can I apply for H1B in March? Yes, you can do that. As long as you have a underlying bachelor's degree in that related occupation. So for example, if you're applying for a software engineer position, as long as you have a degree, bachelor's degree in software engineering, yes, you can apply for your registration in March. There's no issue with that.
I think the next question, I think that's a different question, I think, of interest to many people. So basically, somebody had an H1B in 2019 and came to India and then had an emergency, applied for an extension that got approved, but came to US on 2021 on a dependent visa. Can they reinstate their H1B?
That's a good question. So as long as you held H1B status before and your petition was not revoked within the same fiscal year and your H1B visa was not denied, you're perfectly okay to reuse that H1B. The only issue is whatever the time that you spent on that previous H1B will be counted towards your 6-year cap. Okay. But to answer your question, you can apply for a change of status from your dependent visa to H1B. You don't have to go through the lottery process.
You can do that immediately.
Yeah.
Bhavya says my H1B is approved under consular processing. I still didn't go for stamping. I don't have a job right now. I would like to know when will be the best time to go for stamping. If it was approved under consular processing, I'm assuming you're maintaining your status. Depending on how your H1B was filed, I don't have information. If it was filed with the same employer, same client, same information, and you get a project or your employment is good, basically go prepared with everything. When you were they're running your payroll and things like that.
Yeah.
Again, email us and we would.
Yeah. So basically, just to add to what you're saying, Sunila, she has to go for stamping only when there's a project, right? Mm-hmm. And if she has a project, like if she's able to resecure the same project that was used to file an H1B, then she's fine. If not, they'd have to file an amendment, and then once the amendment gets approved, then she can go for stamping. If she goes to stamping without having a project, then she could be charged with misrepresentation.
Exactly.
Right?
Or like when you're really working, when everything is in place. Or you're going to start working, because if you can't on your current status, again, we don't know what that is. Unlike, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. You say the client letter is not required, but when the consultants attend the interview, they're being asked. Yes, there is a discrepancy between what USCIS is doing and what the consulates are doing. They can ask you and they can hold you. So that is why Santosh said it is not required, but it is good to have. So if you can get a client letter, please get it. Yeah. Rajesh Reddy says, I currently have an OPT. I answered your question about the green card earlier.
Sunila, just to go back to this previous question, right? So even if they ask for a client letter, right? We have had many cases when they ask for client letters, but even if you don't have a client letter, if you're able to provide substantial documentation to show that the position existed, they are approving the 220, the visa, right? They're asking for it, but it's not mandatory that you have to provide it. So for example, assume that you're working through IBM for a client Cisco, right? If they ask for a letter from Cisco, then you have to provide some documentation to prove that Cisco does not provide the letter and that he's a letter from IBM and then he's a MSA, PO, that is sufficient. They're approving the visas. So although they
Even
are asking for a client letter, even if you don't have it, you're still able to procure the visa.
Okay. Thank you, Santosh.
Yeah.
Same goes for the vendor letter. Again, somebody asked the same question. If client letter is not mandatory, is vendor letter? There's nothing that's mandatory. It is not in the regulations. It's completely something that USCIS started doing randomly and it became practice, but it's not a statutory requirement. Sarat says, I'm on F1 in US and will be graduating in May. Should I apply for COS or consular? Need to understand the difference. Sarat, if you are in F1 and if you have OPT and you will complete your requirements, etc., and you're staying on, apply for change of status. If you're falling out of status, you don't have OPT, and things are coming to an abrupt end, then you may be better off applying for consular processing. It just depends on what your circumstances are. Graduating in May 23 does not tell me what you're doing after that. Do you have OPT? Have you applied for it? Have you not? Are you eligible? And things like that. Ajay says, I'm currently on H1 and I want to process my I-140 with a different employer. Am I eligible to initiate my I-140 without being on their payroll? Yes, you cannot initiate the I-140 directly. They'll have to file your perm. The employer B will have to start the whole process. And remember that the green card is a future employment process. So they can file for a future employment position for you for even when you've not worked with them for a single day. So yes, you can. Teja says, my question is, if we file H1B and if it's picked, but my OPT will expire June 2nd week, we will apply for STEM OPT before that. So the STEM OPT will start STEM OPT will start, or we can wait until the H1B is approved. We did address this, Teja. So those you want to take this? My throat is acting up again.
Okay, so can you tell me which question you are on? Is it 453 or 455?
The question is again 454.
No, what is the time at that question? I mean, like
454, Teja.
454, and this is from Teja. 1 second. Okay, so I just joined. My question is, if I file H1B and if it's picked up in lottery, but my OPT will be expired by June 2nd week, so will I? So we will apply for STEM OPT before that. So the STEM OPT will begin, or can we wait until H1B is approved? Good question. So if you are applying, like the STEM OPT will automatically start once you apply for your STEM OPT extension before your current OPT expires, right? Second thing is, when you apply for a H1B, you have the option. In this case, since you are going to get another 24 months, you have the option of either going for a change of status or you can go for consular notification, right? If you want to take advantage of your OPT situation, you can go for consular notification. So in either ways, you will be able to continue working. If you apply for a change of status, then what you can do is you can apply for a gap OPT. If you don't apply for a change of status, then you can continue working using your STEM OPT extension. I hope that answers your question, Teja. Okay.
We are at time. Do we want to continue?
Okay, let's take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. All right.
Okay, so can I travel to India during STEM OPT? Yes, you can travel to India, but make sure that you have maintained a proper employment during your travel, so that if you need to show that you have employment available once you are entering back into the country. And to go back to one of the questions, right? Some of the students may be like, hey, I'm graduating right now. Should I apply for a change of status or should I just go for consular notification? So if you have OPT that is still available for, like, for example, if you're eligible for OPT and you have a lot of time left on OPT, then I recommend going for a consular notification. In that way, you can take advantage of your OPT situation and you don't have to pay that Social Security, Federal Medicare taxes. But the issue is, if you continue being on OPT and then if you move to a different employer, different client, right? Now you're not filing for your H1B amendment, right? So if that happens, then if there's a USCIS visit they might actually revoke your H1B. So it has both pros and cons. So you have to be a little more careful. And as well, if you continue to work in the same position as your H1B is filed, you're fine. Okay, so I think should we wrap up, Sunila?
I guess, yes, we can request NoStack to probably do another session, but,
Yeah.
thank you.
So if anyone has any other questions, you could just email us. We're going to provide our email address, info@somireddylaw.com, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right,
Hello.
well, thank you. Yes.
Hello, everyone. This is Shreya here from the Snowstack team. So we would like to personally thank Santosh R. Somireddy and Sunila Bali from Somireddy Law Firm for taking the time out and answering all the questions that we have had. I know we went over time, but we are extremely grateful for extending the time. We had a very informative session, and such a great experience and knowledge really helped the candidates to be more aware of the process and to be at ease. So we would also like to thank the candidates who are present over here, who have missed the call or have any other questions which have gone unanswered. We are planning to schedule one more session, which might be in a couple of weeks. And if you guys have any sort of questions, feel free to drop an email to info@somireddylaw.com. It is actually present in the chat. Thank you so much once again from the Snowstack team.
Thank you, Shreya, and thank you, everybody. Again, it was a pleasure speaking with all of you. We understand you have questions and we are happy to answer. So please feel free to email and we will get back to you. Thanks and have a great weekend.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Santosh Garu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sunila Garu.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.